Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Keith, and this is Julie,
Hello.
and we are Paradigm Media. Last night at our weekly study, one of the guys had a question, and that sort of spurred probably a 30-minute conversation or longer. And we thought it might be something that you guys would be interested in. Also, last week there were some questions too that maybe we might do some videos on those two things. If you have subject matter that you're interested in and would like to hear our take, comment down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe and do all that kind of stuff.
If you want.
That'll help our channel out. His question, I don't remember specifically, but it pertained to the passage in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, and it talks about that the dragon drew 1/3 of the stars with his tail and cast them to the earth. And everyone that I know, I haven't met everyone in the whole wide world, so let's just put that right on the table,
Right.
in case there's any misunderstanding about that. But everyone that I've ever heard comment about this, the stated unquestionable belief is that there's all of this mythology and folklore about that Satan drug down a third that a third of the angels rebelled with him is based upon this verse that he took a third of the angels with him and that this rebellion took place. And so that might be something you think too, and something I thought, because that was entrained and beat into us, even though we didn't really think about it. We just absorbed these ideas from the culture, and that's one of the things that we focus upon so often is that of how we absorb these ideas from the culture. And a lot of times it's very obvious after the fact that it can't be right. But, well, just like the emperor's new clothes, and we live in the days of the emperor's new clothes. But many times, until somebody says, hey, that doesn't make any sense, and sort of begins to punks, poke holes in an argument,
Right.
we just don't really notice it. So there's several things that there's a whole bunch of theologies, angelology and demonology and eschatology and all of these epistemology. Yeah, gotta be careful there.
Yeah, you do.
Because
No.
yeah,
No. Focus.
this segment brought to you by Depends
Oh,
Undergarments.
stop.
Oh, okay, never mind. Okay, so in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, starting in verse. Let me set the table here by backing up and reading a little bit more of this to give you some context. Again, Revelation chapter 12, starting verse 1. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Let's just pause there for a second. And now, depending on how familiar you are with this, if you're a Bible student and student of prophecy, it may be something that you've read and thought about. But a lot of people are unaware of all of the astronomical / astrological and astronomical aspects of this. And I don't want to focus on that now. Maybe sometime in the future, because that's a subject that interests me. But we wanted to look at this idea that because everybody teaches, again, everybody that I've ever heard talk about it, teaches that there was this rebellion and that the devil or Satan, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit if we have time, rebelled with 1/3 of the angels. Okay. Well, that's interesting in one respect. I would agree with it in that they are interpreting the term stars to be angels. And that I would agree with. That stars are, there's a close connection between the idea of stars and angels. Of course, angels or malachim may well be just a species, maybe, or subspecies of various different types of heavenly creatures. There's lots of different kinds.
Malachim is Hebrew.
Malachim is Hebrew. That's often that word is translated as angels or messengers. Messenger or angel, it could be either one, a malach. But the word star, the idea of stars, is symbolic of angels. And we can see this in a number of places, such as the book of Job, chapter 38, verse 7, when Job had been questioning God, questioning reality, questioning why all of these bad things had happened to him, and it didn't seem just. Then God peppered him with a series of questions about, were you there when? And one of the things of were you there when was when the morning stars sang together and the sons of God shouted for joy. And maybe we'll talk about the sons of God maybe in a video later. But in that parallel passage of that verse, you see the connection between sons of God and angels. And sons of God are often angels. As we see in Genesis chapter 6, that where the sons of God saw that the women of earth were pretty and took wives and all this. Maybe we'll do a video on that later. So we see this idea of the sons of God and morning stars being connected, and again, stars are symbols of angels. We see, I'm trying to think of some other, well, Revelation chapter 9, if you just back up a few chapters in Revelation, John writes that I saw this great star fall from heaven to the earth, and then it identifies this star as the angel of the bottomless pit that is called Abaddon in Hebrew, or Apollyon in the Greek language. And in the famous passage in Isaiah chapter 14, the one time when the word Lucifer appears in the Bible, a lot built upon that. That's basically without merit, without substance, a lot of hearsay again about all of that. But anyway, is this person that it calls Lucifer there in Isaiah chapter 14, one of his boast was that I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. And I think if you'll look at the passage there, you can see how that is not merely referring to physical stars in the night sky, but it is talking about angels. And in Revelation chapter 1, we see, I believe, Yeshua, the Messiah. Revelation chapter 1, John writes, one like the Son of Man, standing in the midst of the 7 golden lampstands or candlesticks, just like what we've got behind us, which is a menorah, and only much bigger. And we see the one like the Son of Man, and he has 7 stars in his hand. And then at the end of Revelation chapter 1, it says the mystery of the 7 stars in his right hand is the 7 angels of the 7 assemblies or churches.
Yeah.
So those are a few of the passages that are going to deal with how we see, again, that stars are symbolic of angels. And you know, we could easily branch off and talk about the different types of heavenly creatures that are mentioned and all that, because often we just inherit so many overly simplistic or out and out erroneous ideas about these things, and that's one of the things that we want to do is to dispel as much cognitive dissonance as we can within ourselves and with others, as also and just cause you to question what you've been taught and what you believe about things, and see if it needs adjusting or tweaking or major overhaul. Who knows? So from that verse, it is assumed that that means that a third of the angels rebelled with the devil, right? Okay, and I don't think that makes any sense looking at this passage, and I don't see any supporting scripture for that worldview, for that paradigm either, that I know of. So if we move on down here in this same passage of Revelation chapter 12, before I do, let's reiterate what we see here in verse 4. His tail, that is the dragon's tail, the great red dragon's tail, drew a third part of the stars of heaven, and it cast them to the earth. So if the stars, which we've, I think, pretty solidly established as angels, I think that is pretty well universally accepted. If they were in the heavens and the dragon drew these third part of the stars and cast them to the earth, now where are the angels? Where are the stars? They started out in heaven and they were cast to the earth. They're on the earth, right? I mean, that's what it says. Okay.
They're not in heaven, yeah.
Yes. So that creates a little bit of problem to me for what comes up in only a few verses later. In verse 7, it says, "And there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels." So here it tells us there's a war in heaven. Now, where the third part of these stars or angels that we read about in verse 4, they're on the earth. So we really kind of have to keep reiterating and repeating that, because the inherited paradigms are so strong, they cling on for dear life, and we keep, a lot of times we get stuck in this cycle of these fallacies that are in people. A lot of times will fight tooth and nail to protect these things, even when it's clear that there's nothing to support it, and obviously logic or other scriptures refutes an idea.
Well, it's what they know. It's what's comfortable. I mean, you've built a lot of theologies and beliefs on top of those things. The cosmology about the universe and about heaven and who the bad guys are, who the good guys are, who we are. You know, we kind of compartmentalize all this, and we feel more secure when we understand the good guys, the bad guys, us. And so when something comes along and messes with that apple cart, it's gonna throw us off center, especially in terms of the big stuff like that.
It does. And I think that subconsciously, a lot of times people subconsciously realize something, that if they start pulling on a string, or if they listen to us pulling on strings, that their worldview, that their foundation is going to be undermined, and who knows what could be the ramifications.
Sure.
Who knows how unstable that could make me feel.
Yeah.
And who knows what types of big chunks of my belief system could be affected or destroyed if I continue to listen to you.
Well, and if that one thing is wrong,
Yeah.
what else
If
could
that's
be wrong? You know.
Could other things be wrong?
Sure.
And it begins to be
Domino
an
effect.
avalanche. Yeah. A lot of times one thing leads to another. That's what happened to me. And that's how I got here. I mean,
Yeah.
I got here. I mean, I'm still trying to overturn or look under these stones and to question my beliefs, because that's the thing. When we're unconscious of things, or we're misled or deceived, we don't know it. We don't know the areas that we're blind to.
Well, and the danger to me, I mean, nobody wants to believe a lie, but the danger is that to the degree that we don't see things as they are, though the scriptures scream the truth about other things we say we want to understand more about, though an angel came into your home and tried to reveal certain things to you, if what you're believing is in error, it's going to prevent you from seeing or understanding. I mean, though an angel come and tell you something, if you can't perceive how it's true, you can't apply it in your life. And so any one of the bricks of the foundation of our belief system being faulty, any brick of belief that gets built on top of that or in relationship to that becomes not as sound or stable as it could be. And if the whole point is to be more like God, who is the Father of truth, then anything that we realize that we have believed that is not quite right, or even not right in a big way, we're really better off if we question and try to make that as solid and sound as we can, even though can be a very uncomfortable process.
Yeah, absolutely. But ultimately, people grab a hold.
Sure.
And just try to hold on to these ideas and beliefs. That's why people get so angry. That's why I get
scared.
Well, yeah, when you question or you refute or their belief system, whether political or religious or whatever, is questioned or refuted, people get very angry a lot of times because their identity is in question.
Sure.
If somebody pulls on the string or manages to poke holes in somebody's belief system, to them, if your identity is attached to that, and most people it is, then your identity suffers great loss.
Sure.
Your ego.
Yeah.
And who knows what all else you're blind to, and what all else that you're wrong about, that you placed your trust and hope in, rather than really the truth. What you thought was the truth that you were hoping in and trusting in and believing turns out to be preconceptions and biases and suppositions and inherited theologies and belief systems that is one. We'll have to do a video sometime on that, of the difference between God and our beliefs about God. It sounds simple, but that is a big thing there.
It is a big thing, and it makes a difference between, in my opinion, some people keeping their faith and some people losing their faith. Because if they can't forge a relationship with God when they don't know what to believe about certain things, you don't learn to do that when you don't know what to believe about certain things, then you're really not as stable as you could be, because there's always going to be subject matter that we're not going to know about and know what to think about. I mean, you can have your inherited belief system. We all do. Happens to me. I lost my train of thought. Inherited belief system. Sorry. Just lost it.
Okay. Well, that's all right. Back to you.
It was, absolutely.
All right.
If I say so myself, it's probably a really good thought. But
okay, sure it was. Maybe it'll come back.
Maybe.
All right. So, So let's reiterate what we stated earlier about this 1/3 of the stars that are mentioned, which again are the angels. Where are they located now in our narrative? Earth, because they were in heaven. The tail of the dragon, and notice how careful I am to try to articulate that based upon what's said, rather than generalize too much. Or notice I haven't said Lucifer. Notice I didn't even say the dragon, but his tail. Mm-hmm. There's a distinction there. The tail of the dragon drew him,
right?
Which is without getting too much into rabbit trails.
Too much.
Isaiah talks about that the tail is the false prophet that speaks lies. In one of I think that's in like the early part of Isaiah talks about that.
That's
so
interesting.
Yeah, so that could bring in, when we look at some of the symbolism of the tail, and look at here of other things that could be involved in that. And that's why I think it's important to not add to,
Right.
take away, or change
Right.
the truth, the whole truth,
Yep.
and nothing but the truth. And when we start doing too much shorthand and approximating stuff, a lot of times it gets way off as it has now. All right, so we've established that 1/3 group is on the earth. They've been put on the earth by who? By the tail of the dragon. Okay, in verse 7, and there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. The dragon fought and his angels. So we've got a war, and that war is in heaven. And there's two sides: Michael in his forces, Satan in his forces. Well, okay. Well, let me back up. Michael and his forces, the dragon and his angels. Okay. Michael and his angels, and the dragon and his angels. Now, it's going to, here in a couple, it's going to clarify more about that. And prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. So there are Michael and his angels, and the dragon and his angels are having a war in heaven. Their place was not found any more in heaven. And we'll see who the who is. Verse 9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan. So here it lists 4 different attributes or names, so we know who is being discussed here. That the dragon here is the same as the devil and Satan and the old serpent. It's all the same entity, which deceives the whole world. So he deceives everyone except the good people, right? He deceives everyone against the smart people. He deceives everyone except the Bible scholars. He deceives everyone except the Messianics, except the Christians. No, it says he deceives the whole world. And he was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So if we've start out with a group that's called the 1/3 of the stars that is cast down to the earth. Where are the 1/3 of the angels? Earth. Then we have a war in heaven with Michael and his angels, and the dragon is his angels, and they're cast out. That is, the dragon and his angels are cast out to the earth. So now who is on the earth? That 1/3 that was already cast down, and now the dragon, which has identified him as Satan, and his angels. So we've got the 3rd group, and then we've got the devil's angels, the dragon's and his angels that were cast out. 2 different groups here. Now, let me ask you if this makes any sense to you. Why would any general destroy 1/3 of his army? Or let me even state it another way. What sense would it make for the dragon to, using the tail, to draw down in 1/3 of his forces and cast them to the earth when he's going to need them? No general would do away with 1/3 or with a big portion of his army. That is a big assumption that this 1/3 had anything to do with the dragon, or at least were united with him. And that's always taught. All you've got to do is read the text here and take off the helmet, the inherited theological helmet, and clearly see that doesn't work out no matter how you look at it.
I agree. Well, and it almost, other than the woman, and she's a big part of this, I almost wonder if the tail dragging 1/3 down didn't help start the war in heaven. I mean, which, if you were a general, if you were Michael, and there was some skirmish or whatever the situation was, whatever the tail exactly is, drug some 1/3 of what had been heavenly inhabitants down. It sounds to me when you say drag, what does it say? Drag? Drew. So,
in this translation.
Okay, so I guess for me, the issue would be like really examining that word and seeing what exactly that word indicates, because a lot of people might say, well, he enticed them away, whereas if it's more of a kicking and screaming kind of thing against their will, that would indicate that they were unfriendlies, not to his cause, not his cause, not his army.
Well, we see two verbs used there. His tail drew and then cast.
Yeah.
One, to me, by contrast, and we would have to do word studies on there, and I probably have, but I don't remember at the moment. But one implies a subtlety or a, what's the word? Deception or manipulation or, I'm not sure what.
Like in the garden.
Yes, just like in the garden.
Okay.
Is the impression I get, as opposed to the casting of more of a violent act. And so whoever this 1/3 is, and we've got to question that now, because it doesn't work out that these are united and part of his forces that rebelled with him. The other group obviously did. There's a group that are with him, and then they're fighting the dragon and his angels. It calls him his angels, so that's part of his fighting force, are fighting against Michael and his angels. And so that Michael and his angels brings up some interesting things to look at too in the future.
And
maybe.
He dealt with them differently, it sounds like. Like one group, he seemed, like you're saying, to have to try to entice. The way he dealt with one group was one way. And then the way his angels are interacting with him later by his side fighting, that's another way. So like you're saying, if you critically look at this, the way his relationship type that he had with these two different groups seems to be very distinct, because regardless of what precipitated them getting cast down to the earth, he was more in some type of face-off with them, whether he was trying to deceive them, whatever the situation was, whereas the ones who were left were still up there fighting with him. So very, like you're saying, very two different very distinct situations.
And in the timeline here, in the narrative of what's going on, the 1/3 incident happened. They're on the earth now. The other group, and I keep repeating this because I've seen we have to. The other group is in another realm. They're in the heavenly realm. And then the dragon and his angels are cast out to the earth where that 1/3 are. So I just wanted to... This was a question last night. Go ahead.
Well, so he draws and cast, and then he himself is cast.
And his forces were cast by someone else.
By someone, well, you're assuming,
by Michael
and his angel.
Yeah, Michael and his angels.
So, a lot of drama. People think that the garden is the first drama. Not so. Not at all.
Yeah,
and there's actually more, like you're saying, if you go through some of these things in these passages about these angels and their hierarchies, and you, like you're saying, if you practice like old journalism, the who, what, where, and when, of going through them and kind of trying to set your belief system aside and just say, who does it mention? Not who you think, not let it, if it says the dragon, let it
diagramming sentences.
Well, exactly. Let if it says the dragon, let it be just the dragon until the scripture proves it's Satan, which this one did, and who are his forces, and just the who, what, where, and when, while setting your beliefs kind of to the side, and then just putting yourself into the story, and just with a rational, the rational mind that God gave us, not a rational mind to try to not believe the word, but just the rational mind that God gave us,
using critical thinking.
Absolutely, just to ask the right questions, and then go into some of these the books of the prophets, where it talks about different entities that came under judgment by God. He would cause his prophets, it says, no, you judge angels, but he used his prophets in the Old Testament to speak to heavenly beings and pronounce judgments on them. And so when you go and you kind of dissect, like you're saying, like sentence structure, the noun is the noun, the verb is the verb, and you put everything in its proper order. A lot of different patterns are going to start to emerge that are more of a complication and a spin-off than just the devil and God have been in this war all this time. Well, you've got this person, you've got this person. In like the prophets, I'm thinking of maybe Ezekiel, the Prince of Tyrus, the King of Tyrus, whatever chapters we'll flash them up there.
28, 29, also 30, 31. But chapter 28 deals with the Prince of Tyrus and the King of Tyrus. But I wanted to mention something else, throw in there, like what you're talking about here. I can't name the number of pastors or people over the years that I've heard start off and talk about how Lucifer was the most beautiful angel and all of this, and that he got a third of the angels to rebel with him and all of that. First, I think that we pretty well destroyed a lot of that idea, but the idea of tying the personality of Lucifer to this individual, to the great dragon or Satan, I think is incorrect too.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's really hardly anything to support that at all. And I think that there is evidence, maybe we'll do a video on that, evidence to show that wouldn't be the case. And just like Julie was saying, one thing that just because a villain is mentioned once doesn't mean that every villain mentioned is the same villain.
Right.
Like right now in our world, there's a lot of villains on the world stage, and they're not the same person.
Yeah, and they may be being inspired by the same spirit.
Yes.
But they're not the same person, just like the Prince of Tyrus, like in Ezekiel, Prince of Tyrus, the King of Tyrus. It talks about the Prince of Egypt. I don't think it said Prince of Egypt. Pharaoh. Prince. Does it say?
It identifies Pharaoh in chapter 29 as the great dragon.
But then it calls him something of Egypt.
I don't remember. It calls him Pharaoh, King of Egypt.
Okay. And so there are these different angelic, for lack of a better word, entities that are identified by these prophets with these different nations. And when God is judging them through the prophets, he'll give a list of their crimes, and then he'll give a list of their punishments, and they're not the same.
Exactly.
So it's different
just
beings.
Like in this week's Torah portion, Akharei Mot, where we study about and read about the Yom Kippur service and the central focus of the ceremony of the two he-goats. And the one he-goat was slain and its blood sprinkled and all of that and brought into the Holy of Holies, the Kiddush Kiddushim. The other goat, you might remember, the high priest, the Kohen Hagadol, would place his hands upon that head of the other he-goat and confess the sins of the nation upon him. And then that goat, it says, was sent away to Azazel. And that's a whole another subject.
Who's another personality.
Yeah, it's a different personality there altogether. And so there's, just because there is one guy who's a villain or a force that's a villain doesn't mean that every time we read about a bad personality that's the same one. And just a cautionary reminder of just don't believe everything you hear or everything that is spoken by teachers, us, or anybody else, or some pastor. A good portion of what I've heard pastors say that the scriptures say, it does not say. It's either completely mischaracterized. I'm not saying they're doing it on purpose, but much of what is taught out there is hearsay and assumption and fallacious. I mean, it's just completely wrong, so much of it.
And a lot of it actually comes from several centuries old literature.
Many times.
Like Milton and...
Yeah, many times when we get into the theologies regarding the afterlife and stuff like that, a lot of it, much of the theology of eschatology, end-time events, or the afterlife, things like that, come from literary works like Milton and Paradise Lost, or movies in modern times, or songs. Art has shaped the thinking of a lot. I mean, well, to this day, think about all of the people that you've heard, including pastors, unfortunately, that talk about Adam and Eve eating the apple in the garden and all this happening.
No apple.
It's not a lot to read. There's just a few chapters there. Read those few chapters and see if you see the word apple anywhere. There's nothing about apples or any of that kind of thing.
And people might say, tomato, it doesn't matter, you're splitting hairs, but where you go wrong...
Most of the whole world believes that that's what happened,
yes,
including religious people.
And where you go wrong is not being precise. Let the text, if you're gonna believe this, and the record of this, then let the text just speak for itself. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that there aren't other sources and resources. I mean,
sure.
there's books that are mentioned in the scriptures, the book of Jubilees, the book of Enoch, Jasher, that are referred to. So there's other works that can inform the scriptures also. But when you're starting out, my goodness, let's just go look at the passage. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of people are totally, and there have been areas, I've done this too, you're totally relying on religious leaders to utterly form your worldview and opinion on certain topics of theology. And I guess for most people, it doesn't enter enough into their day-to-day where they think to go look at it. But, I mean, if you just pick a topic and you just actually look up a concordance and go find all the scripture references to a specific topic, you're going to be greatly illuminated.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's
disturbed
because there's going to be things in there. I mean, pretty much any topic I feel pretty confident. I don't like to say the word guarantee, but I feel pretty confident that if you do just a study of looking up a particular word and then you go read the scripture references that deal with that word, you're going to come across some stuff that will surprise you, that will be different than what you thought or just more than what you thought, and it will start to change your belief around a particular subject. And that's just from a cursory reading of one subject.
Well, folks, thanks so much for joining us today for another discussion. I know we a lot of times do commentary on the Torah portions, and I'm sure we'll continue to do some of those on occasion, but we wanted to do some more topic-driven type stuff and maybe even get more into the area of prophecy and stuff, because I know there's a lot of interest in that, and there's also a lot of misinformation about many of those things. People are concerned, and a lot of talk about misinformation when it comes to politics and things of that nature, but there's been massive amounts of misinformation when in the area of the Bible and mm-hmm. theology and what people believe in that, and the hired help have been some of the main spreaders of the misinformation. So thanks again, guys. Be sure and like and subscribe and click the notification button, and comment down below with your questions and comments and ideas that you would like, or subject matter you would like to see us discuss in the future. Thanks so much. See you again.
See ya. Okay, so Keith has hidden my microphone up under my goodness. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's good or not good, and so we'll play it back in a minute and
see it right here.
Whatever. And see how well it does.
Okay.
Hey, if you like this video, please click like and subscribe to be notified whenever we release new content, and to help other people find us out there on the vast plains of YouTube land. If you have a question or a topic you'd like for us to do a video about, just leave it in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Later, y'all.